We're here from the DCU Center where we just had the state basketball finals, 6 games here today. I'm Greg Story, jumping on the other side of the camera. I'm here with Brenton Hall, the high school sports editor for ESPN Boston, and Jay King from Mass Live. Gentlemen, welcome aboard.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right, guys, we had the D3 girls title game with Archbishop Williams taking on Lee. We had the D3 boys with Danvers over Smith Academy, and then we had the D2 girls with Medfield and Neshoba today. Just your first thoughts from the games.
Yeah, I mean, those were all kind of one-sided affairs. I think we expected those teams to roll in those games. I'll say the biggest thing I took away from that is after the game, and after the Archbishop Williams game, Archie's coach, Jim Bancroft, announced that the team's going D1 next year, D1 South. We got to see Braintree on Monday night. We know they're loaded coming back between the Hurley sisters, Molly Reagan, and Archie's has a great crop of talent coming back next year. They only lose Sarah Ryan. They bring back Alana Gilmer and Jalen Williams, one of the most feared front courts across the state. They're gunning for Braintree. I know they didn't really imply it, but they're gunning for Braintree. I think if they meet in the playoffs next year, watch out. That's going to be an awesome crowd, awesome event. So that's the biggest thing I took away from the early games. So.
And anything on the Danvers game at all?
Yeah, Danvers, again, they ran into some trouble early. Actually, second quarter. They came out really flying, and then Smith came all the way back, made a game of it, but Danvers put them away in the fourth quarter. It's such a great finishing team. They took over in the fourth quarter on Tuesday night against Martha's Vineyard, a team that we all were impressed with their athleticism. And it's just a story of Danvers' season. When they run into trouble, they figure it out, and they put them away in the fourth quarter. Very, very outside of the Brighton game in the Comcast tournament, I can't tell you a game where they surrendered the second half lead when they had it. So, very nice job for John Walsh and Danvers, and they could be back here again next year, even though they lose a talented crop of seniors. They got some talented kids coming up in that program.
All right, and just real quickly, we'll talk about that Medfield and Neshoba game too. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think again size took over. When anytime you get Jen Gnarly down low, she's a terrific soccer player, and now she's a state champion in both soccer and basketball. Terrific post player. I thought matching up with their size it was going to be trouble from the show, but Beth McNamara, a girl actually coached my sister 10 years ago at Oakmont, been around the block for quite a while, and nice to see her get here finally. I think people expected Medfield to win. I don't know if they thought they could win by that much because Neshoba, pretty impressive in their own right too. But hats off to Mark Nickerson, a true class act, winning his first state title. And
now we go to the Brighton game. Unbelievable game on Tuesday. I mean, that's just a finish we talked about afterwards that we're going to be talking about. Malik James has a great game again today. Yeah. Looks like it's probably going to be his final game in Brighton. At least that was the talk afterwards. What do you guys take away from that? Jay, I'll go to you first, actually.
Yeah.
South Hadley hadn't faced a team nearly as athletic as Brighton all season long. They play a mostly Division I schedule in Western Mass, but still, they're not facing those type of athletes. The Malik James, the Prince Negbo, is that how you say his name? They don't face guys like that in Western Mass. And so, it hurt them that Evan Marcus, their leading scorer and kind of do-everything player, got in early foul trouble. But really, I don't think they were prepared for everything Brighton had to provide.
I have to say I enjoyed the mullet, by the way. That was impressive.
The mullet, he initially went with cornrows.
Really?
And he was doing cornrows for a couple games.
Bronson Arroyo.
And then he said cornrows were too tough, too high maintenance. So he went with the mullet instead. Yeah. So it was a good look for him. He pulled off the Kenny Powers pretty well.
The thing I take away from last year at the Garden, emotional win over Stoughton for the Division II Eastern Mass title there for Brighton. There was a lot of soggy tears after that one, and they come into this game as a heavy favorite against Mahar. Mahar only played 6 kids, yet Mahar busted out to a 17-3 first quarter lead and never looked back from that. So it was a bit of a letdown. We were all kind of wondering, the narrative after that Tuesday game was Team of Destiny. I mean, you're not going to find a more amazing finish than what we saw at the Garden Tuesday night against Scituate. At least not in my time at ESPN Boston. So we're wondering about maybe if there was going to be a letdown again coming into this game. It's difficult scouting this time of year, especially with a team that you don't really know a lot about. They don't really get to see a lot during the season. I wonder if there's going to be a little bit of a letdown. But Malik James really proved to all of us here how much he's emerged as a leader. Last year I was doing a story about Brighton. I followed them for 24 hours. Got to be in the locker room with them, and really to see Malik's maturation this year after what I saw last year really says a lot. The players talked about going into the locker room before the game. Malik told them, all right, guys, time to focus. That's all he said. And like that, in a snap, the team was focused. You go back to city champions, and James Jones had a great quote about Malik going in there and telling them, and you knew the mood changed right away as soon as he said, let's focus. really said a lot to me as a leader, and they come out here, no letdown. They hung with him. They battled. I thought Prince Enegbo had a great game on the boards. Nick Simpson coming through. I thought got some great defense out of Nate Hogan, Mark Mojica, Davon Edwards. This is a team they're going to be talking about for a while. Also, a pretty sentimental moment here because this is the first Boston City League team since 2003 to win both city and state in the same year. That last team, of course, Charlestown, coached by Jack O'Brien. Hugh Coleman, his lifelong mentor. He was an assistant on that team. His brother Derek was actually the captain of that team. Yep. So a lot of sentimental value here. Means a lot. We talked to Hugh after the game talking about how much Jack means to him and how he needs a job. He's the best coach in the state. I hope it works out for him. You know, we could use more of the Jack O'Brien tree because what we saw tonight out of Hugh Coleman, one of the best guys, a class act, the guy you really root for, really. Yeah. You meet him for 5 minutes and you think the world of him. So a lot of emotions coming out of that one.
Hugh Coleman actually dedicating the win in the season to Coach O'Brien, so congratulations to Brighton. Now we move from that, we go back to the girls' side, Central Catholic and Holy Name. Your thoughts taken away from that one?
Yeah, Casey McLaughlin, I don't think any player has made a bigger statement in the playoffs as far as super team inclusion than Casey McLaughlin. Obviously a little bit of a chip on her shoulder, missed most of last season with a knee injury, but she came back late in the regular season and they started turning the corner and they won a couple playoff games, and this year they were determined. They were playing like their hair's on fire in these playoffs, frankly. And Casey, particularly, what a steal Stonehill has next year, because that is a Division I player right there, Casey McLaughlin. Obviously, a real emotional post game there. Sue Downer and Casey McLaughlin very close. Couldn't be happier for her. And how about the MVC, huh? 5 years in a row now, the MVC has won the Division I title. We actually looked this up. Going back to 1986 when Methuen won it, MVC has been in the title game 19 times in Division I, and they've won, I believe, 13 of them. Don't quote me on that. Best league in the state, bar none, once again. And you really saw the fruits of it. Every team in that MVC large went deep into the postseason. So.
Yeah, and you talk about McLaughlin. I mean, she's so talented at 6 foot. She just does everything for that team. But most impressive about her really is she's got a motor. She just never stops. It's like she's great on the pick and roll, diving. She kind of reminded me a little of Joe Kim Noah, you know,
really?
where just the energy, she helps out in so many ways, defense, always moving, just that infectious energy. And she's obviously a great player.
Absolutely. Joe Kim Noah, that's a good one.
She's better looking, but.
All right, guys, moving on. We'll move on to Mansfield and Putnam. I haven't caught my breath from the ending of that game. We saw some good stuff on Tuesday. We saw some good stuff tonight. I don't know which one had the better final between those two.
Oh, my God. Ryan Bolter. I know they lost the game, but how about Ryan Bolter? You know, we have talked all year about the foul or no foul up 3 late in the game. Everyone's got a different opinion on it. Gotta love William Shepard here, going very gung-ho. Hey, look, let him try to be a hero. Actually, I've mentioned this before. The percentages actually favor those teams that actually try to let the kid be a hero. But obviously, they did not want to foul there. But Ryan Bolter, cold as ice. I mean, I couldn't do that. You couldn't do that. I don't know. You were pretty good back in your day.
I had a chance to do it in high school. I missed 2 out of 3.
But how about that? But you know, you got to feel for a team like Putnam. Shepard obviously very emotional after the game, talking about the violence back in Springfield and what this means to that city, trying to heal and trying to build its character a little bit. And his first time in 10 years at Western Mass has gone back-to-back as D1 state champions. Obviously, the other one, Springfield Central, their arch rival. And you've obviously covered many a Central Putnam game across many sports, and what a huge rivalry that is. The Roosevelt Ave Rumble, I like to call it, less than a mile apart on Roosevelt Ave. You couldn't feel happier for those guys because they go through so much to get here. Hats off to Putnam, a team that really, they got some preseason accolades, but we didn't really know how far they go until they got here because their schedule was kind of soft. Yep. And then they come in here and they barnstorm.
They weren't even the number 1 seed in Western Mass.
Right.
They came in as the number 2 seed to Central. Even though Putnam really just dominated teams all year, they had a winning average of 24 points per game. Yeah. They only lost once, and that was when Dizelle Wright sat. So when their whole starting 5 played, they were undefeated this year. Yeah. But this was actually their first close win of the season. Every other win they had was at least 9 points. So I think it shows a lot to their character that they were able to overcome everything that was thrown at them. You know, Mansfield hits the 3 free throws to send it in overtime, and then they hit a couple more threes in overtime. Everything they threw at Putnam, though, Putnam just had an answer. Ty Nichols comes off the bench, hits a big layup, and then 2 free throws. I mean, they just Very, very impressive.
I look back to, remember, our favorite weekend of the year, the Hoop Hall Classic out in Springfield, and Putnam comes out, and I don't know if you remember, but they brought the wrong colored jerseys. And they brought AA uniforms with triple-digit numbers. All illegal numbers were 96, 82, 110, just crazy. And they come out and they out-rebounded them by a 2-1 margin. I forget, was it West Side? Is that who it was? Who was it?
They played Sci-Tech at the
Sci-Tech. Out-rebounded Sci-Tech, I think, by a 2-1 margin. Yeah. Just guys who just roll the ball out and they want out-physical you. They pride themselves on toughness. And another thing I thought was key here, they were leaking out so much on every time the shot went up. They were already sending two guys the other way. It was very Phoenix Suns-like, you know. And you asked them after the game whether they thought they had the advantage in conditioning to be able to pull that off, because Mansfield did not adjust well to that at all. I thought that was the biggest key. And they were like, yeah, you know, that's what we pride ourselves on. We run so much in practice. Shepard pushes us so hard. And you can really see that they did not look tired. They didn't look flustered at all. And, you know, neither did Mansfield, but they just didn't have that speed to hang with them when it came down to it. Yeah,
no, that's something Putnam's really been doing all year, is just capitalizing off turnovers. And after the Milford game in the state semifinal, one of the Milford players told me, it was like, we had one guy back, which is what our coach told us to, but every time we had one guy back, they had three. And they just really pride themselves off turning turnovers into points the other way. And Coach Shepard actually told me, in regards to the conditioning, he said that they did a Gatorade bath at the end, and they kind of missed him. They got just to the side of his arm. And he said, man, I wish they had gotten me, because after all I demanded out of them, he said, they deserve to let off a little steam and get me.
Well, I'll say this. I'm going to put a bold prediction right now. These two teams are going to be right back here next year. Putnam's got some terrific talent coming back. David Morrell really impressed the heck out of me. And obviously Brendan Hill from Mansfield, Hockomock MVP as a sophomore. They'll all be right back in this thing. I think it's a very good shot we can see these two teams next year on the DCU center floor. What do you think? I don't know. That's going to be a bold prediction for me, but I think they can happen.
I wouldn't be too surprised at all. You know, obviously Putnam will miss Kwan Bynum, who did pretty much everything for them. Actually, that last play call, the last defensive play, you know, Ty Nichols hits the 2 free throws. They go ahead with 5.5 seconds left. Coach Shepard actually called a 3-2 zone. And Kwan Bynum said, no, Coach, let's pick up man. Yeah. And Coach said, yeah, you know, let's listen to Kwan. And Jonathan Garcia did a great job stuffing DeAndre on that last play.
All right, well, guys, that's going to do it for the basketball season, but we want to let all of you know that it doesn't do it for ESPN Boston High Schools. We're going to have a whole bunch of stuff, of course, all the hockey stuff going on tomorrow. We went behind the scenes with Mansfield today. We're going to have a great video that's going to showcase some of that. Also have some mixtape stuff coming out later on in the week for some of the stuff that we did this past week. Just your closing thoughts, guys.
I tell you, I can't think of a better way to end the season than what we saw tonight. Overtime game, crowd was into it, crowd was explosive. I can't think of a better way. After seeing, I feel like we were spoiled this year. I saw 3 games at WPI, and every one of them was a roller coaster. We saw an emotional game at TD Garden on Tuesday night, Brighton Situate. I can't think of a better way to conclude just a crazy 2012-13 season, a wide-open season than what we saw right here, 50-48 in overtime. Can't get better than that.
All right, well, guys, that's going to do it for us here from the DCU. For Jay King, Brendan Hall, I'm Greg Story. Keep it locked in for ESPN Boston High Schools for more high school coverage.